We're out here in summer in beautiful Glendale, California, and we've done a front Droughtscape, Xeriscape type yard, gravel plants and stuff, and I want to show you around. So you'll notice in one of our last gravel or Droughtscape videos that we had, I called it a small Palm Springs Gold, a 3/8 inch Palm Springs Gold gravel, and here we actually have the 3/4 inch size of that gravel. I mentioned in that other video, I'll get the sunlight on there. I mentioned in that other video that you can kind of see the boldness of the color a lot more with the larger size gravel. So that's one plus point of going with the larger size gravel, as well as being that it's not as messy. A smaller gravel, you kick it one time and thousands of pieces of gravel are everywhere. In this case, you might only get one or two, So in this whole yard, they actually had done a Droughtscape type project before, but it just wasn't really going well. They had a lot of spaghetti, like the really skinny drip irrigation lines everywhere, and they were getting clogged, and it was way too much going on with the irrigation, and all the plants were wilting, and they really didn't, it just wasn't doing very well, so we needed a revamp. I took everything out, a few inches out. We utilized several of their existing plants, which I like to use, especially if we have succulents going on, because you can literally pretty much rip off any succulent off of its stalk and shove it in the ground. These were forming in clusters. This is a foxtail agave, a variegated. You can see the yellow in there. But these guys like to grow on the big long trunks. You've probably seen them around where they grow in big clusters on big long trunks, and they'll kind of go like this, and it'll make 4 or 5 of them or a whole bunch of them. So sometimes to kind of start fresh and low, you just rip that trunk in half and nicely, and throw it in the ground, and now you have a nice individual plant to go with your nice new landscaping, right? So the plants we reused here are the agaves there. This is an aloe, actually. It gets those big clusters of orange flowers. It comes up on a long big stem, so the flowers are really cool. Maybe in itself not a spectacularly nice looking plant, but the flowers are actually worth it for them. So I got a couple of those, the coral aloe or aloe striata there, a couple more agaves here. These were all already here. I have agave there, coral aloes there. Want to see how many we have. See how many? I mean, we repurpose like many plants, almost 20 plants. I got a couple more there, a couple more here. That one's in really good shape. That one and that one. So repurpose a whole bunch of plants. You save a good amount of money not bringing in even 25-gallon size plants. And doing the delivery on it and everything. So saving costs is always nice. So yeah, and then of course beneath our gravel we have a weed fabric that we always use, high quality weed fabric. We use Ewing Irrigation or other companies to supply that kind of fabric. So we want to take out all the soil down a few inches so we can restart, and then we can make sure that our gravel ends up at this level as opposed to on top of the level. Sometimes in the case where you have some tree roots, like here, we have a little bit more of a slope coming down into here, so you kind of walk on this or something, some of the gravel might spill off, but most of this is, regardless of any of that, most of this is very, very low maintenance. You're gonna get a little bit of a mess from a tree like this, jacaranda, so you're gonna get a lot of droppings and stuff. But one cool thing about the larger 3/4 inch size gravel is you can actually just usually take a blower and blow the leaves right off. A couple pieces might come up, but again, it's not as bad as like a smaller gravel. Something else that might be easier to clean up in a Droughtscape type situation would be a decomposed granite, but then you don't get the drainage that the gravel allows. The decomposed granite is more of a flush surface. That's actually DG out there, the decomposed granite in the parkway. So you can see that it's kind of mixed in with dirt. We did not do this. This just wasn't our focus for the project. They might clean this up a little bit later on. Kind of difficult to work with all the roots and stuff, so this is actually not a great spot to install DG, just so you know. Really almost any sort of slope isn't that great for DG, because there can be runoff and it can kind of get everywhere and get a little bit messy. I like using DG for pathways and kind of contained patios in a backyard away from the house and all that. So anyways, off the subject of DG, gravel, weed fabric, and then to every single plant underneath the ground we have a drip irrigation hose. This is actually a good example. We have a 1/2 inch brown irrigation hose here, and that's actually running beneath all the gravel to every single plant out here and the trees and everything. other existing things here. Of course, I didn't bring that tree in. We're not a giant tree company, so we didn't do that. And that tree was already in. And that tree was already in. And we left the palm here. This is a little pygmy type palm. You know, they generally, in Los Angeles, he's actually just, I don't see him doing very well very often, but this one had some life left in it. There were a few other ones that were basically dead, or they had one little twig coming out, so we got rid of those. And this is a nice little accent right in front of here and to kind of block our irrigation valves. The irrigation valves we generally use are a Rainbird PVC irrigation valve. Let me show them that. High quality valve, not crazy expensive or anything. You know, we're not doing, I very rarely use a steel, galvanized steel type valve, you know. And then we have this little entryway here. Again, gravel running all the way through. I love using gravels. The drainage aspect is fantastic. You just grate everything away and it soaks into the gravel and spreads out, right? So you generally aren't going to get much puddling and stuff like this with the gravel. So here's a little Palo Verde we brought in. This is just a little 15-gallon size, so it comes in a bucket about this big. So it's a little smaller guy, and they didn't want anything too big in here, so you know, it'll grow in, it'll get way up to here over time, or they can kind of contain it and trim it if they want. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do with that, but nice little accent there. So, you know, balance-wise, we have some nice balance going on. Of course, with all our different drought-tolerant type plants, which I'll get into in a second. But the balance, even if you come out here, from the street up is very interesting. It's kind of nice sometimes to frame the windows and not put things in front of it. Some people put things in front of the windows. I like to see the house, especially when you have a cooler looking house like this. You know, so from here, you know, you have the balance of that tree coming up the top. And then over here, you have your palm in the back and that tree. And then in the inside, that Palo Verde is going to grow in a little bit more. So we have this nice balance of the larger things. And then everything else is kind of randomly placed aesthetically. Different heights, different colors, and all sorts of stuff. Of course, some of these things will grow larger and taller and wider than other things. You know, the fire sticks will eventually get huge way up here, but it's a very easy thing to trim. With the fire sticks, they do have a little sap on the inside of it that you're really, I'll grab it from down here, that you really don't want to get involved with too often. You can see a little white milky sap there. Some interesting stuff. You don't want to touch that and put it in your eye or anything. Or accidentally get it in your eye. I don't think you're going to put it in your eye because you'll be washing your eye out for 3-4 hours or something. It is also a skin irritant, so you don't really want kids or dogs chewing on it or kids playing with it or anything like that. So just be wary of it, you know. Oh, there's some right there. Get it on your hand, not a big deal. You know, you get it all over your body or something, that's a different problem. So, you know, just be aware of it. It's so cool that it's worth using, of course, in a lot of situations. We didn't put it immediately next to the sidewalk. You know, it's a nice aesthetic plant. And then we have our sages and stuff here. That's a Russian sage. I use them a lot. Beautiful little flowers. We're in summer. We're nearing the end of summer, so, you know, hopefully these don't get too shocked before we get into a little bit of better weather in the fall. That's a Russian sage. Here's an autumn sage with some beautiful little red flowers on there. Things like hummingbirds are extremely attracted to this type of plant. And it's beautiful, you know. These guys, most of the sages, salvias and stuff are gonna get about, you know, they're gonna get decent size. They're gonna really fill in. And then here's kangaroo palm. They'll also get a decent size too. This looks like an orange one. Pretty cool. So, you know, even the grass part will get up to here over time, and then that means the flowers are then up to here. So they actually get pretty big, you know, but regardless of how big something like this gets, it's still very easy to maintain and it's not invasive. You know, the invasive plants that get really wide and crazy and take over everybody else and have a 6-7 foot wingspan, you know, we just don't really want to work with those kinds of plants most of the time unless we need to for some reason, right? I like keeping it, this is your little bubble, right? And that's it. And even with the sages, this is your little bubble, you know. They can grow, but they're not going to grow like crazy. Like there are plants like a Mexican sage, Texas sage, they get huge, crazy, wild. I don't personally really like using that. They look good when you first put them in. They're not going to look too great after a couple of years when they just start taking everything over, and you're not going to want to be trimming it every week because it's just a hassle, you know. So I use things that are going to fill in, but not fill in too crazy. Here we have a beautiful rainbow New Zealand flax. Fantastic plant. It's got a variegated yellow in there, and you also have the pink to it. Really great plant. They like filtered sun and, you know, maybe full sun in the summer when you're planting them in the summer, maybe not a full sun on them, you know, but they can take a lot of damage, you know. And there's a plain variegated New Zealand flax, the same thing right here. So you just have the green and yellow with that, no pink. You just get a little contrast up here. I have several other variegated. Here's an agave I actually brought in. That's an agave angustifolia there. And it's also variegated. They usually come variegated. It would be difficult to find a non-variegate on that. That's kangaroo paw. I don't know what color. There might actually be a way to determine it from the leaves, but I actually have no idea. It's either, I think I brought through all three colors. We went very colorful and bright with this layout. They said, I want a lot of color. I said, I can bring it. And this is a Westringia fruticosa, Blue Heaven it's called. Fantastic little frosty color. These are beautiful plants. You get those nice little violety flowers in there. I use those for hedges a lot. It's a really cool hedge type plant. But even just scattering them out with the other sages and stuff that look similar. Fantastic plant, very drought tolerant. All these things are very, very drought tolerant. They're going to withstand a lot of heat and stuff. Planting directly in summer is going to be, it's going to be a little bit damaging pretty much no matter what for any kind of plant, you know. Luckily, again, we're kind of at the end of summer here, so they might not get a crazy amount of the heat, and we have a good amount of shade coming through here, right? Especially that midday sun isn't really pounding these, maybe a little over there, but not too bad. And I have a yellow kangaroo paw here. I think I brought this in. That's another agave that I brought in, actually. That's another variegated. That's a agave desmediana. Fantastic plant, nice and big. More Westringia, more kangaroo paw. Here's an echeveria, a ruffled echeveria. You know, a lot of times echeveria, you're going to use this little tiny one, and you know they're going to be more like the size of the flower here. And you're going to use them for accents, but this is one that you can get in the bigger 5-gallon size buckets for nice accents along here. You know, they don't really like the full sun that much either. Maybe after they're mature they can take some full sun, but they got to get rooted and stuff first. Here's one of my favorite accents. This is a Lomandra longifolia breeze. I've used this in other videos, along with a lot of these other plants. Fantastic, bright green. Just great wispy accent. You know, they get these little weedy stalks on them, which are actually kind of cool when they get taller. But no flowers or colors coming out of that, really. Purple New Zealand flax, fantastic plant. I use this in almost every single drought-tolerant job I ever do. It's just getting that color in there just immediately diversifies the yard. Fantastic plant. And then that's another variegated New Zealand flax and another ruffled echeveria. So they kind of framed it here with those two. Very nice layout by our guys. So now I have that frame there. And let's see what else we got. Another autumn sage or a red sage. More angustifolia, desmediana. Foxtails that were already here. Oh, here's the red yucca. This is a red yucca plant. These are the guys on the stems. They get nice little pink flowers. Very cool plant, and you get kind of the hairy look to it. So it's a very interesting little plant. Extremely drought tolerant. Maybe not quite as drought tolerant as the agaves will be, but a very small step below that. And then the sages and stuff will be again a very small step below that, right? But these are all way high on the spectrum of drought tolerant and sun tolerant type plants, right? So all of these things are going to do pretty well. And then here's another one of my personal favorites, Germander sage. You can see the color on that. This is one of the very few natural blues you're going to get. You can actually see a little butterfly on them right now. Get it? And this is it's just such a brilliant color. And you know, any of these where the flower is kind of shaped out like this, like a lot of the sages and stuff. You know, it actually wards off certain animals and brings in more of the animals you might prefer, like hummingbirds and stuff. Especially on things like the kangaroo paw. You know, here's another orange kangaroo paw. You know, these little spouts. You know, sometimes they're only actually accessible by something with, you know, a longer mouth. You know, so pretty cool, pretty interesting. You know, you'll still get some bees and stuff, especially on things like the Westringia, where it's actually, you know, the flower is actually like a little landable petal, right? You can kind of see that. Obviously extremely easy to access by the smaller critters and stuff. Great to have the bees out. You know, we don't want to use things that bring in too many of certain types of animals either. You know, in certain cases you might not want to use a tropical milkweed or like many of them, because it'll bring in too many and they bloom year round, and the milkweeds bring in the monarch butterflies And if you use too many of them, they actually get confused because they bloom year round, and now we have a problem with migration, right? Now, of course, one property is not going to do that, but we don't want to do that everywhere. A couple little accents is great. That's another reason I like using so many different varieties of plants, because we don't want to overload certain animals with a bunch of the same type of plant. Actually, it's very interesting. So sometimes a random design with a whole bunch of stuff is actually the way to go. And yeah, this is Droughtscape, you know, this is irrigation, this is planting. This is what I want to do all day. You know, this is what I have the most fun at. You know, we do pavers and decks and all sorts of other stuff, but in the long run, this is the living, breathing thing that we want to focus on, and we love doing this. We love it, you know, so that's it.